Hi, I'm Jim Doti, and welcome to Chapman Connects. I'm so excited. Today I have the good fortune of having two of the leaders of what has to be one of the most venerable Orange County institutions with us, namely the Orange County Register. We have Ron Hess, who's the publisher of the Orange County Register, but also the president of the Southern California News Group. You know, I have a pretty good memory,
Yeah.
but I was not able to memorize the newspapers that are involved in that. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read them off. So
Sure.
this is the Southern California News Group, of which Ron is president. Covers the Register, of course, but also the Press Enterprise in Riverside, the Los Angeles Daily News, the Daily Breeze in Torrance, the San Gabriel Valley Tribune, the Long Beach Press Telegram, the San Bernardino Sun, the Inland Valley Daily Bulletin, the Pasadena Star News, the Whittier Daily News, and the Redlands Daily Facts.
Yeah.
Let's assume you're...
If I keep it track, that's 11 of them, that's right.
And congratulations,
Thank you.
Ron was a recipient of the Justice F. Kramer Newspaper Executive of the Year Award. Congratulations
Thank you, I
on that.
appreciate that.
We also have with us a senior editor, the lead editor for the Orange County Register, but also a lead editor for these other papers in the Southern California News Group. And Todd, congratulations on all your journalism awards, but especially I'm sure you're particularly proud of the being inducted into Cal State Fullerton's Communications Wall of Fame.
That was a big deal. As a Titan, you take a lot of pride, and it was a good communications program there.
Well, congratulations
Thank
on
you.
that. You must be very proud. Well, the theme of our virtual forecast at Chapman this year, of course, was COVID and how COVID's
Sure.
affecting the economy. Ron, how is COVID affecting the Orange County Register?
Wow. Well, that's probably a question where no spin is allowed, right? It has been difficult. It's been a challenge. We, like most employers, I think first and foremost, we had to give thought to our own employees' health and safety. So like everyone else during the pandemic shutdown, we quickly were thinking about how we were going to transition our team from primarily facility-driven operations to a remote operation. So we scrambled through that like everyone else did as quickly as we could. We spent tens of thousands of dollars on equipment that we needed to purchase. And then we had to think about those employees who were not able to work in a remote environment, like our manufacturing team, our delivery team, and we had to really think about how to build protocols in place to keep them safe. So I think that first and foremost was what was important to us, was keeping our own staff safe. But you know, secondarily and maybe equally important was the work that was going to be entailed in our coverage of this once in a lifetime, hopefully, unprecedented pandemic. So our journalists who had just recovered from the Kobe Bryant story, a lot of work went into that, began to have to pick up the pieces of a very complicated and uncertain story. You know, it seemed like every day the news was changing. Models and scientists were competing with politicians and what the real truth was. And our journalists were doing their best to not just inform, but to also explain. But they were scrambling. They had to work 24/7 in trying to understand what was happening. So we put forth a lot of our effort in covering this story, while at the same time, like many other publications, the ad revenues sort of went in reverse. So at a time when probably our expenses were increased as we were trying to both cover and protect our staff, the advertising revenues dropped in half, and put a in half, yeah.
Wow.
Put a real crunch into our operations as we were trying to figure out how to build a sustainable model going forward. So it's been tough, but I'll tell you what, we have, you know, in this particular business, especially for the last 20 years, our employees have gotten pretty good at managing through crisis. That's what a transformative industry goes through, right? And we are that we look at this not just as another crisis, because it's a critically important one, but we know how to get behind an effort and how to all pull on the same end of the rope so that we do our jobs of covering our communities as they would expect us to. I'm super proud of them.
Do you think you'll allow them to continue working virtually in the future once this pandemic is over?
Well, we had a fair share of our staff that already did that
I
to a
see.
certain extent. Certainly not a majority, but a fair share of them. I think what COVID has done for many employers is given them an opportunity to test how their operations can run with a remote environment. And I think I would say we've done a pretty good job of it. And for an environment and an industry like ours, which is constantly having to transform itself from a revenue and expense standpoint, anytime we can reduce the overhead costs, for instance, of facilities by maybe making them a little smaller and allowing people the freedom and flexibility of working remotely, if it's a win-win for us as the employer and the employee as well, I could see that happening in the future.
Yeah. You know, I mentioned in the introduction that the Register is a venerable institution, and obviously the print media is extremely important to the fabric, the culture of a community.
Right.
And Todd, you know, I know from journalism students here at Chapman, it's a real passion. This is something they want to get into. They want to change the world. They see the importance of it. How have you seen writing the news and how important the news is during this pandemic crisis that we've been in?
You know, there was a message sent early on in the pandemic when Governor Newsom declared that journalists were essential workers. It was something that it confirmed everything that we knew about our role, but also told the public that these are people who are essential to you knowing how to manage the pandemic. And I thought that was an important thing for people to hear. And that happened across the country. Journalists are the ones who are making sense of what is going on. We're not going into this with an agenda other than to inform our readers, and we're having to learn a lot as we go through this pandemic. But I think we've done a good job of that, and to know that the public has turned to us with increasing frequency has also been rewarding. We saw our digital numbers, for instance, on anything related to the coronavirus went way up. We had a lot of traffic to our websites, including digital subscriptions, that were, we were benefiting from that. And that's even when we were making a lot of our essential coronavirus coverage free to the public. Because people would come, find out, this is what I need to know about this pressing issue, and then they'd see what else we had. So we had a lot of depth and breadth of our coverage at that time, and have maintained that over the several months since. So it's been rewarding. It's also a challenge though, because there hasn't been a let up in 2020. As we know we are essential, it also means that we haven't been able to shut it off from, as Ron said, we had the Kobe Bryant helicopter crash, and it was 9 Orange County residents who died on that helicopter. To the California primary was March 3rd, and then things started to shut down right after that. Oh, and then we ended up with protests that kind of took over everything. And we've got another election coming up. It's nonstop this year.
Busy time for you, for sure. One of the themes of our forecast, Ron, was the fact that the state of California and Orange County have been hit harder economically by COVID than other areas most other areas of the country, largely because we're more of a tourist, leisure and hospitality is a larger share, but for other reasons as well, more regulated environment. And I'm just wondering, given your leadership role in this, not only the Register, but the Southern California Leadership Group, the 11 papers you counted, have you noticed as COVID hit your Southern California news group harder than other media centers around the country?
I don't think they have. I think it's been about the same.
So this half drop in that's been a national phenomenon.
For regulatory reasons, we created a study to look at what the COVID impact has been on newspapers up and down the state of California, and the advertising impact has been about the same. There's a range, of course, depending on the strength of certain categories of revenue, but it's been about the same. And for my sister papers in Colorado and in Minnesota and in New York and Pennsylvania, they've all seen similar drops in advertising. You know, frankly, many of us have the same types of advertisers: our retailers, our restaurants, the event producers, the education facilities and sports venues. And so everything that lined up with the advertising segments for our newspapers is what was impacted by the shutdown. So most of us were dealing with similar results.
Yeah.
So I will tell you, though, that you know, the impact to different media centers is interesting. Not just newspapers, but you know, I have a real concern for media outlets, even here within Southern California, like our broadcast partners, like our radio colleagues, and even some of our print colleagues who are 100% dependent on advertising revenue. Because think about that, they are reeling in many of the same ways that a newspaper is, without the stream of revenue of subscriptions. So we have a good stream of revenue of subscriptions. As Todd mentioned, it actually did well during the pandemic. People were clamoring for a desire to read our content both in print and online. Our subscriptions grew during that period of time. But for the smaller papers, who are maybe free weeklies for radio and for broadcast, who are completely dependent on advertising, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
And I especially think about our ethnic media partners right now, those who, at this point in time, where they should have a large voice in the conversation about diversity, and they are the ones who are probably reeling more so than others because of the COVID and because of some future regulatory issues that are coming down the pipe. Hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about that too.
Yeah.
But they're really getting squeezed, and there's a lot of concern for that. Fortunately, there's some solutions on the table, but right now that's a big concern of mine.
You know, Ron, I read recently that amazing statistic, over the last 15 years, that 25% of the nation's newspapers have ceased publication.
That's true.
25%.
That's true.
And those that are surviving obviously are under incredible disruptive pressure from other forms of e-media. Yet the Register, I have to say, is doing a darn good job. Your coverage of COVID has been extraordinary. I've looked at other papers, and I think Register is a standout. What accounts for that? Why do you think the Register is doing well in a tough environment?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, it starts with the people who are doing the work. We have an extraordinary team of both leaders and staff who understand that digital is our future. Everything that we do, we have a little label called Digital First, and it just means that every thought that we have, we need to think first about the digital future. I'll tell you that you know, the mistake that some of those in our business made 20 years ago, right? 20 years ago, most people didn't have high-speed internet in their house, much less a mobile device that they could interact with anywhere. And many people bifurcated the business models between a print and a digital business model. And because of the fact that digital was still such a small piece of it, there was a belief that it could complement the print edition, and as a result, much of the content was put online for free. What we ended up doing as the internet speeds changed and people could access content a lot quicker was we taught an entire generation that anything that's online should be free. I still get.
It's not a real good business model.
It's not a good business model. I still get an email occasionally from people who are upset that we're charging for our subscriptions because they say, "Well, I already pay Cox Cable for my internet. Why do I have to pay you too?" But the truth of the matter is, our business model is one of gathering local news. We're a local news media organization. Print and digital are just simply platforms for which we produce that news to the readers in a way in which they want it. And if you think of our business that way, and you won't be looking at digital and print uniquely, you'll be looking at them as two separate platforms for delivering the content. The content is what matters. How we produce it. Sure, the technology is important. Sure, the experience is important. And sure, just like anything else, Netflix, Spotify, whatever it may be, your content has to equal the value that you're charging for it. But we have learned both from the advertising and the subscription standpoint how to be productive on the digital side of it without losing sight of our core readership, which is still more heavily invested in the print. But we know the path forward, and we're prepared for it. We're not afraid of it. And I think that makes a big difference in our mindset as we encounter the changes and transformations of our industry.
Yeah. Todd, on that point, in terms of the e-edition versus the print edition, how does that enter into how you work with journalists and train them? Or has it changed the way you approach journalism?
The journalism itself hasn't changed because it's still, anything that we are going to publish online, we hold to the same standards that we would.
What, where, and why
Yeah.
do you?
Yeah, it's not like that we have a lower bar to clear just to put something online. We might do it quicker, but we still have to do all those key things. What it does is it changes that the thought process of, like Ron said, we want things online first, and we do have a thought process that goes into everything that we do about, okay, what's the audience for this? And sometimes it will strictly be a print audience because, and maybe I'll have a Sunday centerpiece that is just a wonderful story that will do okay online, but it's that great thing that you like to sit down with your coffee and read on a Sunday. And that's perfect. But then sometimes we have the stories that say, well, this will be a great digital story because we can flesh it out with a lot of links and we can have video to go with it, or maybe an interactive graphic. So it's just kind of the thinking about how we plan for a story. The quality level, however, I don't think changes at all.
Good journalism is good journalism.
It is,
Right.
and there's a constant conversation about, okay, what's going to make this the best possible story that we can, and then we talk about reaching that audience. So we work with our social team, for instance, and do a lot of things on social media to go to where the readers are, because we can't expect that they're just going to come to our website. So how do we get something in front of them? Well, maybe this is a story that would be great on Facebook to share because it'll get a lot of people making comments.
Mm-hmm.
Some things will be on Twitter, but there's always that discussion of, okay, you've written it or you're writing it, now what? Let's go get those people.
Well, I know that for our forecast, I've worked with your team of journalists,
Mm-hmm.
top drawer, great writers, able to take a complex subject and make it not only informative, understandable, but interesting to your readership. Todd, tell me, when I read my register in the morning, increasingly it's online because I could copy articles, send them out to people, hey, read this, it's important, or just save them for my own purposes. It's like a miracle that you can put out a daily, really a daily paper of such scope and sophistication. How do you do it? You're in the center of the action.
It is the daily miracle, and that's one of those things where we can't get too caught up in it because then it does get overwhelming in thought to go, I'm done with today, I've got to do tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. Right? There aren't days off. But what it also means is that there's a constant flow of stories coming in, and we're open to ideas, especially now that we've got such amazing topics that have to be covered well. So we're looking for good stories about the coronavirus or about social justice, but also the things that are that can give people an escape from that. So we're open to things from all of our writers and editors to suggest. And you know what? It's not that difficult to do because we have so many talented people on our staff. Sometimes it's a matter of, okay, we can't fit everything in the daily paper, but that's what the beauty of our website is. because everything fits there. And so the two of them work together really well.
Yeah.
It truly is a miracle, and
Yeah.
it truly takes heroic efforts to do this. I got to tell you, we have some of the finest journalists in the country who've done their work, but specifically during this period of time, our photographers are our heroes. The reporters, oftentimes they're on assignment, they're out in the field doing their work, but a photographer is never able to work remote.
True.
He or she
Good
needs to
point.
be in the field always,
Yeah.
and whether it's the threat of the coronavirus or whether it's the threat of rubber bullets and tear gas, which many of our photographers experienced during many of the protests, they continue to be out there every day doing their work so that they can provide our readers a firsthand view of what they've experienced. And more heroes that we have are our manufacturing team. These people are just such amazing individuals who have a love for what they do. They come to work every day to produce that newspaper, because many people just think it somehow just miraculously appears on their doorstep.
Because it always does.
Yeah, but after Todd and his team do their tremendous amount of work, then there's a whole process that takes place from about 10 midnight till 6 o'clock in the morning while that paper's delivered. And for coronavirus, we had to be really thoughtful about separating all of our crews and keeping them unique so that if any infections came in, it only affected one crew. We couldn't shut down the whole place. That was a serious concern of ours, right? If the plant was infected, we may not be able to print. We worked with other news organizations throughout the country about backup plans, but from those who produce our paper, insert the advertisements, and even especially those who deliver the newspaper, every day it's a miracle, every single day. And like Todd says, you wake up the next morning, you do it again.
Yeah.
But we're really good about deadlines.
Well, you do that, you make that miracle happen, and you deal with deadlines. But in addition to all of that, this was another theme of our update forecast this year, and that is the increasingly regulated environment
Yeah.
in the state of California. Because in addition to dealing with e-commerce competition and the consolidation of the print media business, you're dealing with doing business in a state that's highly regulated, and a good example of that is AB5.
Yep.
And dealing with that. Ron, could you clue our viewing audience? I think they're all familiar with AB5 and how it deals with contract labor versus regular employment. How is that affecting the newspaper business?
Yeah, we are a casualty of probably some bad legislation. I think our official opinion on it is when government has to pick winners and losers for a bill, it's a bad bill to start with, right?
You're talking about all the exceptions.
All the exceptions, right? Different lobbyist groups were able to get different industries the exceptions that they wanted, and that's just not how legislation should be built.
Definitely not good.
And many of the legislators are saying that they had no choice. It was just a codification of a court ruling. But my opinion is legislators make law, courts interpret it. So if a court interpreted a law that wasn't correct, the legislators have an opportunity to fix it, not just to codify it. But it worked for many who were interested in pursuing more employment opportunities for labor. And I think primarily, as you said, your viewers probably know, it was tied mostly towards the gig environment, Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, those people who are in an emerging business. But we got caught up in it because many people don't know that we use a lot of independent contractors in our business, both from a reporting standpoint with freelancers, and primarily all of our distribution is done through a independent contractor basis, has been for 50
And
years.
your photographers too.
And photographers too, correct. So we were successful.
But that's how you get the paper out.
That's exactly right.
The printed paper.
That's exactly right.
These are independent contractors.
Yes, we use distribution companies who then outsource the business to different individuals who contract for that particular route.
Yeah.
So last year we met with the legislators who authored the bill and those who were advancing it, and we were able to get a 1-year exemption. I think they recognized, perhaps too late in the game, that they were really negatively affecting a First Amendment protected operation like the local news media. So they gave us a year where we both were going to work towards looking for alternative solutions, whatever that may be. And that was why we commissioned that study about the impact of AB5. What the legislators were surprised to learn is that delivery cost is the #1 most important cost. It's the highest cost in most newspaper operations. And complying with AB5 in the way that they have it written was going to, in many cases, double that cost. So it was a huge impact. It was going to put, that alone was going to put many newspapers who might have been on the fringe of profitability into the red, and create a tremendous amount of what we call news deserts, right? More newspapers that just were not going to continue operating anymore because they couldn't at a loss. Then in March and April, when the pandemic happened, not only did we have the looming regulation of doubling our most expensive cost, but then COVID created a reduction of our advertising revenues at 50%. So we spent this last three or
double
four...
whammy, getting hit on both sides.
Squeezed on both sides,
Yeah.
right. I mean, literally unsustainable. And that's true for a large organization like ours, or like the LA Times, or San Francisco Chronicle, or San Jose Mercury News, but it's even more so true for community publications, weekly publications, and rural publications. So we've been working with the legislature, with the governor's office, to try to have them peel us out of that and give us an opportunity to look for alternative distribution methodology, but give us time to do so, specifically because of COVID. And we felt like that was the right thing to do, to make them aware that this isn't just an impact on the ownership of our organizations or the industry as a whole. This is going to impact our readers. If AB5 doesn't get reversed for newspapers, there's going to be fewer newspapers, one. There's going to be fewer days of the week that newspapers are going to be printed, two. There's going to be fewer areas where delivery is going to be made. 3, there's going to be dramatic increases in subscription prices to have to offset that. 4, and finally, everything else is going to get cut too, including journalism, if we have to comply. So the good news is there's a solution. AB 323 was just built the last week. Assemblymember Blanca Rubio up in the West Covina market authored this bill for us. It just came out of the Senate Labor Committee, and we're hopeful that with the right amount of pressure from the industry and from our readers, that many in the Senate and the Assembly will see the merits of this and give us the opportunity to be exempted out of the AB5.
But this is another example of how ludicrous AB5 is, that you need these kinds of special exemptions. And no question, you need that.
Right.
But other institutions, organizations do too. So it's just another, I think that's symptomatic
Right.
of a bad bill that simply needs to be reversed. We all, most of us anyway, get up in the morning and we start our day. I don't know how you could start the day without knowing what's going on in the world and in your community. On that point, with all the consolidation going on, I don't have any worry, even with this consolidation, that the register's going to go away. One thing I do worry about, though, is that the Orange County Register is so important to the culture, to the fabric of what gives Orange County its identity, as separate from, let's say, Los Angeles. In the statistics, oftentimes we're included with LA as one larger Southern California area. But the Register helps give us that special Orange County identity. We only have a few minutes left in it. Looking towards the future, is that a legitimate worry on my part that we're going to lose that in the future, that the Orange County Register's special identity, its libertarian philosophy in the editorial page, but more importantly, its focus on local news?
Yeah. No, I don't think that's a worry you have to have, in part because the Orange County is filled with an amazing group of residents and readers of the Orange County Register. And of course, we're reliant on their support, right? Both from advertising and subscription base. But it's the impetus is on us to make sure that we're continuing to do the job of covering Orange County and elevating its importance in the Southern California market. So long as we do our job, I have confidence that the residents of Orange County are going to continue to support us. and allow us to provide them that breadth of local news that Todd was talking
Yeah,
about.
the way I look at it is we benefit from having the greater news group because our resources are vast when it comes to being able to deploy a lot of people. Say if there was a fire in Orange County, we could pull people from all over the Southern California news group to go cover that. But we also have our local news reporters who are based in Orange County, and that's what they do. And there's nobody else who has as robust a local reporting team in Orange County as we do. That's something that I'll always fight for, and the good thing is it's not a fight because Ron and our executive editor for SCNG, Frank Pine, they support that. They understand the importance of informing 3.2 million people who, as you said, they don't consider themselves part of Los Angeles. Orange County is a special place.
That's a great relief, so thank you for sharing that with
You're
me. I'm relieved, and thank you for your leadership and everything you're doing to preserve this remarkable legacy that goes back to the Hoyles family.
Sure does.
Here in Orange County. I applaud you, and please keep taking on those Chapman graduates and students from our
Definitely.
School of Communication as interns in the region. They're learning from the best.
Good.
Thanks
We
for
will.
being on the show,
Thank you,
Ron
Jim.
and
Thanks for having
Todd.
us.
Keep up the great work.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.